When people think about coups, they usually imagine something loud and obvious, soldiers in the streets, governments collapsing overnight. But what if there was a more stealthy way of bringing a country to its knees? Peter Schweizer is a New York Times bestselling author, and he's here to talk about his brand new blockbuster, The Invisible Coup, how American elites and foreign powers use immigration as a weapon. Peter, always great to see you. Thank you for writing this book, first of all. And I look at the situation with mass migration here in America. It's hard not to compare it to Europe and the problems they're having right now with mass Muslim immigration. And it seems, Peter, a similar stance by elites, both in the U.S. and in Europe, welcoming in, intentionally it seems, migrants who don't share Western values. Is that how you see it? Is this intentional on the part of elites to transform Judeo-Christian Western civilization?
Yeah, there's no question about it, Eric. In fact, they say so themselves. A lot of the big donors to NGOs, people like Bill Gates and George Soros, they give to organizations that are, pro-immigration, that relocate refugees. And these NGOs will say the reason they want mass migration is for the, quote, transformative effects that it will have on the host country, namely the United States or Europe. And I think we also have to acknowledge what the foreign adversaries say about this. What does China, the Muslim Brotherhood, or what does Mexico say about mass migration? They all see it in different ways as a tool or a weapon to deploy against the West. So how we think about it is less important than the way that they think about it and talk about it. And clearly, they see it as a means not only for changing our civilization, but also changing our politics in a direction that favors them and their agenda.
Yeah, Peter, in the book, you call it weaponized immigration. So well put. And I think back to the 4 years before President Trump came back into office. And a lot of Americans were outraged, saying, why are they doing this? Why is the Biden administration letting millions upon millions of people cross into the United States illegally and not sending them back home? There was a strategy here, it seems, Peter.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as soon as Joe Biden was declared the winner of the 2020 election, foreign governments immediately went to work to open up the spigots. People don't realize it's kind of a faucet. They can control how many people are going to try to get to the U.S. borders. So days after Biden was declared the winner, the government of Mexico passed a series of laws secretly that they knew would spur mass migration to the U.S. border. Marxist governments like Nicaragua said, pay us $50. You can fly to Nicaragua from anywhere in the world, and we will get you up to the Mexican border so you can get to the United States. And literally more than 1.5 million people from Africa and Asia took them up on it. Democrats discovered in the 1990s under Bill Clinton that newly minted citizens that are naturalized vote about 85% for Democrats. That evens out over the course of 20 years, but for that first 20 years, it's a very reliable Democratic voting bloc. So every American president of the Democratic persuasion in recent years has gotten rid of the restrictions or the requirements for getting new citizenship. They got rid of criminal background checks. They got rid of literacy requirements. They got rid of the civics tests that you're supposed to pass because they wanted to mint as many new voters as possible through the citizenship process. And the final thing to be said politically is it's a big winner, beneficiary for Democrats, even if these immigrants don't vote, because our census is calculated not based on counting citizens, but counting on people that are present in a state. So this is a big boon to states like California because it gives them more congressional seats, it gives them more in the Electoral College, and that helps elect Democrats.
Yeah, and we see why the Democrats are so fiercely opposing voter ID laws, because that would enable possibly the droves of illegals to vote without showing ID, another factor. And Peter, the book is such an incredible expose. One of the things you expose is that Mexican government officials are living on U.S. soil?
Yeah, I mean, Mexico's elite has said repeatedly, and I quote, dozens of them in the book, is saying that mass migration to the United States is a way of extending Mexican sovereignty into the United States to retake territories that they lost in the 19th century. Those are their words, not mine. And the way they accomplish that is by mass migration and by setting up political structures in our country. So there are literally Mexican officials who live in the United States, Arizona, California, Texas, Chicago, who are senior government officials. Their job is to represent Mexicans in the United States, in the Mexican Senate and in the Mexican Congress, and they do so. So you have this intrusion into our politics by the Mexican government, which also includes an extensive network of consulates around the country. The UK and China have respectively 6 and 7 consulates in the United States. Mexico has 53. And those consulates are involved in meddling in our politics in the United States, organizing anti-ICE protests, et cetera. So they are literally actively moving inside of our country to advance their interests in what they call Greater Mexico. So that is a very tangible way in which Mexico is beginning to exert control or authority in portions of the United States.
Peter, it is insane. Folks, you must pick up this book. It is called The Invisible Coup, available right now, Amazon.com, wherever books are sold. It is a must-read. Up next, more with Peter Schweizer. What about China's role in all of this, and what can be done to combat it? President Trump obviously securing the southern border, but the barbarians are still inside the gates. More with Peter Schweizer after the break. Stick around. Welcome back to Stakelbeck Tonight. We're talking to New York Times bestselling author Peter Schweizer, and we are diving right back into his brand new book, The Invisible Coup, all about the nefarious blueprint behind mass migration into the United States. Peter, earlier you mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood. You mentioned Communist China as some of the beneficiaries of this mass migration madness. Talk a bit more about Communist China, their role in this, their goals in this, and the factor played by birthright citizenship.
Yeah, so China views their competition with the United States not just in terms of spheres of influence or military competition. They view that this is a clash of civilizations, the Judeo-Christian civilization in America versus the Chinese Communist Party civilization. And it's about how we organize society, what we value, what we think is important. And they've come up with very ingenious ways to exploit our immigration system on an industrial scale. And birthright citizenship is an example of that. Birthright citizenship is this notion that the 14th Amendment means that if you are born in the United States, you are automatically granted U.S. citizenship. What China's done is created something called birth tourism that is a massive scale industry that literally means that more than 1 million U.S. citizens are being raised in China right now. And the way it works is the Chinese Communist Party alerted the elite of China in the People's Daily, which is their major newspaper, in 2011. They started running articles saying, hey, if you travel to the United States, give birth to your child there, bring them back to China and raise them here, your child will still have U.S. citizenship. And a vast industry of thousands of companies perform these services for the Chinese. Now, the United States government has no idea how many people have been granted citizenship this way because we don't collect the data. We don't have on, a birth certificate what the nationalities of the parents are. But the Chinese government has looked into this, and their estimates are eye-popping. They believe that over the past 13 years, every single year, roughly 100,000 Chinese babies have been born in the United States and then taken back to China, where they are now being raised. And so, Eric, what that means is that when these, quote, American citizens who literally were just born here but are completely tied to China, are going to be able to vote when they turn 18. And to put that in context, 1 million voters in China, the 2016 election was settled by 72,000 votes. So this is a massive, massive vulnerability. Supreme Court's going to be hearing this case. I'm glad they are, and I hope they're going to factor in how China is manipulating birthright citizenship to infiltrate and subvert the United States.
Peter, it is just stunning. We're so glad you're exposing this. By the way, President Trump, look, taking action across the board on this madness. He took office last year, of course, and right away secured the southern border. But we're pretty far down the line here with this problem. Number one, what can be done? What further can be done, Peter? And number two, who does it right? Europe, Canada, Australia, obviously a mess for the most part when it comes to migration. I think of Poland and Hungary perhaps as exceptions to the rule. A bit more about what we can do to stop this and reverse course.
I think a country like Japan has very tight restrictions on immigration. I actually favor immigration. My parents were immigrants, but it needs to be controlled. So to get a hold of this problem, the first thing we have to do is really make the case before the Supreme Court and hope that the Supreme Court makes the right decision and says, birthright citizenship does not mean anybody who just happens to be here. Any pregnant woman who steps her toe across the border, that their child is granted American citizenship when they have no ties here. They have no relationship here. They have no roots here. That's the first thing that needs to be dealt with. And the second thing is we've got to deal with these political structures that the government of Mexico has put in place in our country. The Muslim Brotherhood has done similar things. It's not acceptable for foreign diplomats and foreign government officials to be trying to manipulate our elections and radicalize migrants. So those are two places that we can start. And then we need to continue to secure the border. We need to continue with deportations. And once we deal with the weaponized immigration, we can have a very important and valuable conversation of what level do we want legal immigration to be in the United States. But we can only do that once we deal with the weaponized part.
Peter, that's the key. Great points all around. Legal immigration, people support, and of course, assimilation. You get into the lack thereof in the book. Folks, it's called The Invisible Coup. Available again right now, Amazon.com, wherever books are sold. Also, be sure to follow Peter on X and across social media. Peter, great work as always, my friend. Keep it up. We'll see you again soon. God bless.